I think there were a lot of people who thought PSG would win this final. I know I did. And given that each Munich final in the past has led to a first-time winner in this competition, it seemed as though the chances of PSG winning was pretty high, right? But you cannot tell me you expected a 5-0. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I know I didn't. 5-0. 5-0. That is a horrible thing to have to go through, so I send my commiserations to the Inter supporters out there. Nasty watch for them. There have been some 4-goal deficits in the history of the Champions League / European Cup, but never by 5 goals. Unbelievable. Anyways, guys, for the last time this season, this is it for UCL this week. This is the end. I'll thank you later, but a quick note, I have a child due in July, a future Ballon d'Or winner. Surprise, just slip that in there. So if I suddenly go quiet, I mean, you know why. I still plan on covering the Club World Cup, but that coverage could stop at any moment when the baby comes, right? So yeah, just a heads up, and let's get into this final, shall we? Straight away, PSG wanted to show Inter that they would get no respite, pressing the hell out of them. In fact, they wanted to show them so badly that they had the ball first from kickoff and they kicked it straight out deep into Inter's half. There would be no easy free kicks, no lax passing around the back. They were ferocious in the press as per usual. And we saw a few times where they were able to actually press this typically calm and cool Inter defense into coughing up the ball close to their own area. That's not something you see too often, despite Inter's defense actually looking worse this season than years past, as we went over a few times during our coverage of the Champions League and a few preview videos. But the first thing that struck me with PSG in possession, something that we've, seen all season long essentially, was just how unbelievable Vitinha was at keeping possession when he's surrounded, evading the press, keeping the ball, and buying time for his teammate to find space, find a line Vitinha can thread. Him, João Neves, and Fabian Ruiz have got to be one of the best, if not the best midfield in Europe right now. They have run the show no matter who they are playing against, with Vitinha at the heart of that. And we saw PSG absolutely cut this Inter side open within the first 12 minutes. Quick pass and move, that's what they do. Getting their triangle set up, and then a third man runs in behind. This time it was Doué that Vitinha picked out, who squared to Hakimi all alone for 1-0. The passing and movement, the way they just buzz around their opponents, that's what's been so impressive, amongst other things from PSG this season. Unimpressive to me, Hakimi not celebrating just because he's playing against his former club. You're in the Champions League final, man. How many times are you going to get that opportunity? Do your thing. And they continued that press. Every time it went back to Sommer, Dembele was just milliseconds from nicking it from him. When Inter went short, they were pressed. When they went long, very few of their passes were getting to Lautaro and Thuram. They just didn't have a way out. This is where you have to give credit to Luis Enrique, who said around the Coupe de France final that they had seen plenty of Inter, that they knew what they had to do against them, and so far, that was ringing true. Because after 20 minutes, another goal. Barella was trying to let the ball go out for an Inter corner at the opposite end of the pitch, but I believe it was Nuno Mendes who nipped it away just at the last second with Kvaratskhelia, latched onto it, sprung Dembele down the left, he held it up, switched to Doué, and his deflected strike left Sommer without a hope. 2-0 just like that. Every time PSG had the ball, they looked dangerous, and Inter just couldn't lay a glove on them. I really thought Inter would have been better in that first half, in the match in general, but the midfield was absolutely dominated by PSG. Vitinha, again, big part. João Neves, Ruiz played their part. Pacho was doing really well to step forward into the midfield and cut off the supply to Inter strikers. He did that often. And the way for Inter to hurt PSG was clear, as we drew it out in the preview. Set pieces. 2 corners in the first half. You had Inter's 2 attempts in that half at Cherby's, which wasn't very dangerous, and Thuram's header that just went wide, which was very dangerous. And speaking of close attempts that were very dangerous, Inter had a huge let-off when Doué played the ball to the back post. Dembele ghosted in behind Di Marco, and Dembele found a way to not hit the goal from just a few yards out. Really strange. Maybe Di Marco had a bit of a touch that caused a mishit, I'm not sure, but it was uncharacteristic of 2025 Ousmane Dembele. That was like 2018 Dembele. And Kvaratskhelia ended the first half domination with 2 chances, one a deflected strike that bounced wide, and then from the corner, he headed over. 13 attempts for PSG, 2 for Inter, 68% to 32% possession, just domination. And when you look at Inzaghi's options, you could maybe identify Di Marco as being the weak link out there. He hasn't been that great this season, and we'll give him a break. He did have some injuries, but he was a big problem. No matter if it was Hakimi, Dembele, Doué on the right side, he was struggling with his awareness and picking up on the attackers and defending one-on-one. That was where I thought Inzaghi may make a change for Augusto or something, who has been pretty good for Inter. Also in the midfield, maybe bringing in Fratesi, as the midfield was pretty ineffective against PSG. When they weren't passing around them, they would just get bypassed completely. And since the knockout rounds had begun, this was sort of par for the course with PSG, right? They have been unequivocally the best team in this competition, as they have the defensive side, as well as an attack that nobody has been able to stop. But no changes at halftime from Inzaghi. Inter on the back foot right away. Free kick could have caused some danger for Inter, if not for Çalhanoğlu hitting it horribly. You don't get to say that often, right? But he completely wasted what would have been a great opportunity to trouble PSG's defense. And maybe if they make it 2-1, things could have changed. Speaking of defense, one thing I didn't understand was why Inter didn't stop trying to pass it out from the back when that was only causing them issues. If they weren't having a close call at the back or losing it in midfield, they'd be forced into hoofing it, and William Pacho would be there almost every time to cut it off. They needed to just go long and see if they could win an aerial battle. Lautaro or Thuram certainly had a decent chance of winning one. Better than what they were doing with how PSG were pressing them at the back. I think that would have been a better option. But DiMarco was finally subbed off after 8 minutes into the second half. Only it was for Zalewski instead of Augusto. Really bad 50-ish minutes for DiMarco. And Zalewski was carded about 2 minutes into his appearance. But he looked positive on the ball, at least. There was a few moments where he looked positive. Now, things started to get a little ugly when Ousmane Dembele pulled out a nasty back heel that sent Vitinha streaming forward. Inter's defenders were chasing shadows. Doué played through, and he converted for his second 3-0 on the night. Doué, I guess I should mention, is the youngest ever Frenchman to score in the Champions League final for now. The youngest ever player to score a brace. And the youngest, he gets that one. And the third youngest to score in a final. At that time, right? He went off shortly after with 2 goals and 1 assist in this final, just having fun with it out there. No hat trick, at least not a real one, but he got the alternative one, a brace and an assist. And at 19, everyone said it, but he just looks unbelievable. Unbelievable player. Like I said, a little nasty, a little ugly, and you knew that the pace gap between them would leave spaces at the back, and PSG took advantage. Dembele playing Kvaratskhelia through, and he finished cleanly at the near post. Perfect whipped finish that saluted the post as it went in. Sommer caught leaning out there. Could have conceded another if not for Barcola doing Barcola things. Like the examples I showed in the preview, this guy is unfortunately just not clutch with his finishing in this moment. Did brilliantly to get past one defender, sit down another, just had Sommer at his mercy and the entire right side to shoot at, and he pulled it past the near post. Just to rub salt in the wounds, a player even younger than Doué, who had been on the pitch for about 3 minutes, showed Barcola how to finish at the near post. But it was Barcola who set up Mayulu, and that finish in off of the post was calm for the 19-year-old as he took a few of Doué's records. Not youngest to get a brace. But anyway, that was it. I was curious if the referee would even bother with any stoppage time, as it was 5-0, no reason for it. And as soon as they hit 90 minutes, it was over. He did them a favor because PSG could have scored more with the way that they were running circles around Inter at that time. I personally don't think that anyone can really argue with PSG being the best team out there in this competition. I mean, QSI, sport washing aside, just looking at the football from PSG, and they were absolutely the best team in the knockout rounds. Took a while to get going in the league phase, mind you, but even in their losses in the knockout stage against Liverpool and against Aston Villa, you could argue that for the majority of the match, they were the best team. For sure against Liverpool in their loss. And besides the second half lapse for about 20-ish minutes, better than Villa on that night as well. And the person behind all of that, Luis Enrique, of course, who built this team meticulously with Luis Campos. No more bling bling, as their president said. They built smartly. It's not like they haven't spent money, because they absolutely have. And they have the highest wage bill in Europe after all. But that doesn't guarantee success. Sure, it helps. But you need a mastermind to pull it all together. And Enrique has done that. A treble with Barcelona and a quadruple with PSG. I mean, PSG's history is proof that you need a mastermind to pull everything together. He has said in the past that PSG were obsessed with the Champions League, but he wasn't and he just had an ambition to win it. Ambition versus obsession. He instead got his team obsessed with the football that he wanted them to play, as he knew that nobody would have an answer to it, and they are rightful winners. And I honestly couldn't be happier for the guy. Seeing that clip of him talking about his daughter and how he views himself as fortunate rather than unfortunate to have lost her, fortunate to have had 9 beautiful years with her. God damn, man. Heart-wrenching stuff that he and his family have been through. I know this has nothing to do with the football, but to have this kind of gratitude in spite of the tragedy speaks to something, right? It has to the mental strength, to being able to see things from a different angle, no matter how heart-wrenching it is. Now, 2 things can be true here, as we often say on the channel. PSG were fantastic and Inter not their best. This was a bad performance from Inter, as it seemed like they had zero preparation for this match, which was weird. They had, in fact, rested their players for their match against Como, a lot of the big guns at least, and in some ways I can understand it because they were coming off of injuries, right? You don't want to risk it, but perhaps that did end up hurting them a little bit, as they didn't look ready for this match, as if it was too much time between Barcelona, and that affected them. Of course it did with guys like Lautaro, but even so, I don't know that this aging Inter side could have kept up with this PSG side that averages about 24 years old in their lineup. Something that I was looking into prior to the match. Maybe you saw it as well, because I think it was Julien Laurence that highlighted it. But PSG averaged running about 117.94 kilometers per match in the Champions League. Inter's average around 92 kilometers, almost 26 kilometers fewer than PSG. Now, more running doesn't automatically equate to more goals or success, but I think that in this case, it does paint a picture. Maybe it's just confirmation bias, but it was always the fear for Inter going into this that they simply just couldn't keep up with PSG. They aren't just speed and running, but technically gifted as well, which is just a lethal combo for a slow team whose defense has struggled this season, hasn't it? You gotta wonder if Inzaghi is thinking of answering the phone from Al Hilal in this moment, or if he will want to right the wrongs and be part of the rebuilding of this Inter squad. They don't need a complete rebuild, of course. Let's not be crazy. They made the Coppa Italia semifinals. They were contending until the very last day for Serie A, and they made the Champions League final. Not exactly a horrendous season, but they could use some refreshing. And it is a little bit unfortunate that a guy like Inzaghi will have this historic defeat in a Champions League final next to his name, that this Inter side in general will, because they are better than this, or at least they were. And so for PSG, progress isn't always, linear. It's not a guarantee that they will continue on this trajectory and be completely unplayable, but they could, with how young they are. Which begs the question of who catches them. Maybe Barcelona, but not with how they defended this season. PSG would have had too much fun with that back line, way too much. If Barcelona tighten up their defense, then we'll be talking. But imagine PSG against their high line with the sheer pace they have, and against a midfield that can contend with Barcelona's. It's hard to say. They're probably the closest to PSG. Real Madrid, I don't know, a lot to be seen next season with their new coach and a few new faces in the back line. Any of the English teams, not sure what City will look like next season. With a striker, Arsenal could have a chance, but even so, PSG were burning as many chances as Arsenal were, right? Liverpool, we'll see how their transfer market goes, as they could be a problem. I mean, it's looking good so far, and being in the second season with Slot, they could do it. Bayern, hard to say, not fully convinced of Kompany yet. Speaking of Arsenal, actually, only Arsenal had played more UCL matches than PSG without winning the tournament. So now Arsenal have, well, I guess they stand alone there. But, guys, another Champions League season comes to an end, and so concludes my coverage of the Champions League. This is honestly my favorite recurring series, if you could even call it that. I really love covering this competition. I watch so much of it. I try to give you guys the most balanced coverage possible, which some people take any criticism of their side as me being biased, but whatever. And I hope you guys enjoyed it all once again this season. Like I said, we're in the baby birth zone now. Could happen at any time in the next month and a half, so I may disappear for a bit, but I'll post something in the community tab if that happens. But until that happens, more videos and Club World Cup coverage. So thanks, guys, for all of the support. I love you, and be well. Bye!